Good morning, Alexander Eagles. I have to tell you how much we really miss you these days now that we can't be together in person. That said, we can still do things together virtually on film, and so today we're going to talk about the spring bush, getting out in the woods. Before we do that though, when I'm outside in the natural environment, I'm reminded that this is the traditional land of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. And we know that the Saugeen First Nation has been on this land since time immemorial. That means before recorded time. And we're on this land today, and so we thank them, Chimigwech. Today we're going to talk about the spring bush, and usually I do this workshop in person, but today we're going to do this with video recording equipment, and so I thank Mr. Walters for helping me out with that. The spring bush is a wonderful place, and those of you who know me know how much I love being out in the woods. This is a time of year when the whole world comes to life. And you can enjoy the spring bush with all 5 of your senses: your sense of smell, your sense of sight, your sense of taste, your sense of touch, and your sense of hearing. When I say your 5 senses, and I think of my sense of smell, this is a time of year when the snow has gone and it has laid the ground bare. You can actually smell the smell of damp earth. Also, you've got plants and flowers that are starting to break through that earth and creating their own smells. The smell of wild leeks, the smell of other plants, and the fragrant smell of flowers as they come through the ground. You can use your sense of sight. This is a time of year when animals are coming out of hibernation and they're moving around more than any other time of year. And so animals like the white-tailed deer, turkeys, raccoons, porcupines, animals like that are on the move. Now eagles, you have to be really stealth. That means you have to be really quiet, and you have to move slowly if you're going to see some of those animals. But your sense of sight is a great sense to use during the spring bush, or in the spring bush. You can also use your sense of taste. Now I have to remind you, you never put anything in your mouth in the spring bush unless an adult says it's safe to eat. Some of the things that I like to eat that are in the natural environment in the spring are wild leeks. And this time of year you can start to see the green part of the leaf part, come through the ground. That can be used in salads, or you can eat it raw. Later on in the spring you can dig those leeks, and the bulbs, little white bulbs, can be used to spice up food, and you can eat those raw as well. Things like morels, which are wild mushrooms, or fiddleheads, are also tasty treats that are in the spring bush. Remember, never put anything in your mouth out in the woods unless an adult says it's safe. Your sense of touch is another sense that you can use in the spring bush, and some things that I like to put my hands on in the spring bush are called antler sheds. And remember, the white-tailed deer buck, the male deer, grows new antlers every year, and in about February they drop those antlers. They fall off their heads, and you can find them when the snow goes away. These are real treasures because they don't last long in the bush. They're made of material that's really hard, and one of the minerals in antlers is calcium. And the other animals like to eat the antlers, and they'll gnaw on those antlers until they're gone because they need calcium for their own lives. That's that circle of life. One animal doesn't need something, another animal will eat that and consume that. And so antler sheds are real treasures, and eagles, I really think that they're good luck too. So you can be in the spring bush using your sense of sight, looking for antler sheds, and using your sense of touch to pick them up and collect them. But most of all, eagles, in the spring bush, I love the sounds. I love getting up early in the morning and going out before the sun comes up and listening as the whole world comes to life. This is a time of year when animals are making all kinds of noises, mating calls, contact calls, and they make very specific and special sounds. You can listen for those sounds, and you can even find ways to make those sounds and communicate with some of those animals. I want to talk to you about the sounds of the spring bush today, and I want to see if you can recognize some of these sounds. there are animals like white-tailed deer that are making sounds this time of year. You have to listen carefully and be very stealth because those sounds are not very loud. They're making what we call contact calls. I want to see if you recognize this sound. That's the sound that a white-tailed buck makes, and basically that sound means I'm over here. It's allowing other deer to know the buck's location. Sounds like this. The doe, which is the female deer, will respond with this sound and will make this kind of contact sound. This time of year, the does are starting to give birth to their fawns, and so they'll use that call as a contact call for their fawns to make sure that the fawns know where the does are and the does know where the fawns are. This is a time of year that's very dangerous for young deer or fawns because there are a lot of predators that would like to, well, you know, eat the fawns. And so the does are very protective and need to know where their fawns are at all times. There are other sounds in the spring bush that are very exciting. In fact, this is a time of year when the birds are making a lot of interesting sounds. Let's see if you can recognize this call. If you said the Canada goose, you're right. Canada geese are coming back. They migrated back in the fall, and now they're coming back to this area. And so in the morning, when they leave the swamp to feed and go to the field, you'll hear them make that sound. Other waterfowl will be making lots of noise too. Ducks will be making those kinds of contact sounds as well. Birds are very interesting animals to listen to. See if you can recognize this sound. You know what that sound is? That's the sound of a crow. Those are big black birds, and you'll see those flying around making all kinds of noise this time of year in the spring bush. Here's a bird sound that you might not recognize because you have to be out early in the morning to hear this bird. That's the sound of an owl. And owls are birds of prey, and in the mornings, in the first light and last light, they're looking to hunt. One of my favorite sounds, though, is the wild turkey. And this is a time of year when the turkeys are breeding and they're making lots of noise out in the spring bush. See if you recognize this sound. That's the sound of a wild turkey, a hen. Now the hen is the female turkey, and this time of year they are getting ready to breed. This is the breeding season, and soon they're going to be trying to attract the tom with these kinds of sounds. As soon as they come out of the roost, that's where they sleep at night, they hit the ground, and the first thing on their minds is breeding. The tom, the male turkey, and you can see right here I have a tom or a jake. That's a younger tom, and you can tell he's a younger tom because he's got a short beard. And I've got a hen. The toms will be chasing the hens, and the toms make a different sound. Here's the sound that the tom makes. We call that a gobble. Now hens make a variety of sounds. They make a purring sound that sounds like this. That's a sound they make when they're really content. Then they make a clucking sound like this. And when they're ready to breed, they yelp. And that's what brings those big toms in. You know, there are other sounds that you might hear in the spring bush, not just the sounds of birds or deer. There are predator sounds. And often you'll hear those predator sounds right before it gets dark or just as it's getting light. See if you can recognize the sound that this predator makes. Do you know what that sound is? If you said that's the sound of a coyote, or we sometimes call them a brush wolf, you're right. Brush wolves or coyotes are moving through the woods this time of year, and they are hungry. They're looking to add some body fat, and so they're eating a lot of the animals that we just talked about, or trying to. Often though, those animals are very quick, very fast, and so they can escape the predators, but every once in a while a predator will trap an animal, and sometimes you'll hear odd sounds, and it's a sound of an animal that's in distress because of a predator. I don't know if you've ever heard this sound out in the woods. See if you can recognize it. That's a scary sound. That's actually the sound that a rabbit would make if a predator was chasing that rabbit. Eagles, I know that rabbit distress sound is a really funky sound, but that's part of nature. And again, we have predators and we have prey, and so that is a sound that you might hear in the spring bush. Just so you're not alarmed, you'll know what that sound is. Eagles, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. When you're walking in the spring bush, remember, this is the time of year when the young of certain animals are being born. And it's exciting to see like a baby deer, which we call a fawn, or a baby of some other kind of animal, but it's really important that you handle that properly. What I always want to remember to do is to take a picture with my eyes or with my camera and then back away, go the other direction. This is really important because your hands have human scent, and if you touch one of those animals, you could put that human scent on the animal. That animal could be rejected by the adult animal, and a young animal, a baby of any species that is rejected by a parent, by its mother, will not survive. So it's really important. Look with your eyes, take a picture with your eyes or your camera, and then go the other way. Eagles, it's really important this time of year to spend a lot of time in the natural environment. Get outside, enjoy the woods, enjoy the spring bush. There's lots to see out there. There's lots to smell, taste, hear. Use all those five senses and really have a great time. Remember, Eagles, while we're away from one another, since we're not together, you are every day in our thoughts, you're in our prayers, and most of all, you're in our hearts. Keep working hard and cooperating with your parents, and keep playing hard because that's important too, but most of all, keep soaring above the clouds because that's what eagles do.